مساء الخير وأهلا ومرحبا بكم في هذا اللقاء المتكرر والمتجدد في صالون السكري الذي تلتقون فيه معا، مش بالضرورة بتلتقوا فيه معايا أنا بس، في يومي الثلاثاء والسبت مساء في التاسعة. Heute wird Deutsch gesprochen. النهاردة احتمال نتكلم ألماني واحتمال برضو نتكلم إنجليزي. جزء من السبب إنه هيكون معانا ضيوف، والضيوف دول هيساعدوني في إلقاء بعض الضوء على حياة صديقي الراحل أحمد عز الدين، أحمد شوقي عز الدين، الذي رحل عن عالمنا في الأيام الأخيرة من عام 2020. وأحمد عاش حياته كلها تقريبا في ألمانيا، وعاش القسم الأكبر من حياته في ألمانيا في برلين. وأنا النهاردة حابب أتكلم عنه لأنه بالدرجة الأولى أحمد صديق، ما كانش صديق بسيط بالنسبة لي، أحمد كان صديق عمر. ولأنه أحمد كان نموذج إنساني نادر الحقيقة. يعني كان جزء من الحاجات اللي بفكر فيها إن الواحد يتكلم مرة عن الصداقة. ولا أنك بس بتسأل es läuft noch nicht. لا es läuft Anke und ich warte auf dich und die anderen Freunde und Freundinnen. فزي ما قلت يعني هتبقى بالتأكيد فرصة إن احنا نفتكر أحمد، وكمان نتكلم على بعض الحاجات اللي أنا أعتقد إنه من المهم إنه ذكرى أحمد تبقى موجودة في المجال العام، لأنه أحمد كان مثقف له دور كبير في الحركة الثقافية المصرية وحتى في ألمانيا، وهنعرف بعض ده النهاردة لما نتكلم أكتر عنه. هينضم لي عدد من الأصدقاء. أنا شايف صديق الأستاذ إبراهيم الملواني بينضم من سويسرا، الصديقة عايشة والصديق توبياس بينضموا من برلين. I will most likely switch to English, aber wir werden auch auf Deutsch sprechen. Tobias, I think, Tobias, you are with us now. You can tell me.
Ich habe jetzt einfach mal das Problem, dass 3 Sprachen gleichzeitig zu hören sind.
اوكي. والاستاذ ابراهيم معانا برضو. مساء النور. فخلونا يعني عايز اقول بس بعض حاجات عن احمد، يمكن في ناس كتيره ما سمعتش عنه، لانه احمد كان راجل بيحب ما يقعدش في الاضواء. احمد كان راجل بيهوى ان هو يعمل اللي هو عايزه، ويعيش ليعلم ويتعلم ويقرأ ويمارس حياته ويلتقي بأصدقائه، لكن ما كانش مهتم كتير قوي بالمظاهر أو بالألقاب أو بحاجات كتير. I will switch to English now because I can see that Aisha and Tobias have joined us. I know that many of Ahmed's friends are following us now on the link that we are laying now. And I wanted to just start talking about a couple of things in Ahmed's life. Ahmed, and let me share some of what has been written about him, because I think Dr. Amr Hamzawi wrote something a few days ago about him. And he was a close friend of Amr, and Amr says that he has met Ahmed Ezzeldin in 1994 when Amr went to Berlin, and they had a close relationship. He was talking here about how he discovered Ahmed's passion for Egypt, its literature, art, and thoughts, and his friendship with many of the Egyptian well-known writers and intellectuals, Jamil Ali Ibrahim, Al-Adib Baha Tahir, and also he's talking about how he, through Ahmed, knew many of the symbols of Egyptian left who lived in East Berlin at some point in time, or in the east part of Germany, such as Dr. Mustafa Haikal and Mr. Nabil Yaqub, whom they visited in Dresden. in Germany and in the Old East. He mentions also his passion of following the different translations of Naguib Mahfouz into German, and his passion with various things like the voice of Aida al-Ayyubi and his passion for Egyptian cinema, which translated into various lectures that he has given in different places, from the Haus der Kultur in der Welt in Berlin to the Kulturwerkstatt and other places. And also he mentions that he met the late Dr. Rushdie Said, the great geologist, who was also a close friend of myself and of Ahmed. And then later on, when Amr Hamzawi went to Washington, he met Rushdie Said there. He also met Dr. Nasr Hamid Abu Zaid, who visited Berlin at the time. I think he spent some time in the Wissenschaftskolleg in Berlin. And also he mentions Dr. Ahmed Abdullah Roza, who was a friend of Ahmed Ezzeldin. There are different things that Ahmed has done in Berlin, and they are very important. Not necessarily the most important thing, or the most important thing that I would like to remember about Ahmed, because I do remember him more as a friend, and less as the writer and intellectual who is full of achievement. I'm trying.
الصوت.
كده مسموع؟
ايوه كده احسن.
تمام. Did anybody hear what I said before, or it was all gone? It was all gone.
No, just the last sentence.
Just the last sentence. Okay. I'll just go through something very brief now, also about what I just wrote, to remind myself of some of the things that Ahmed has done in Berlin. Ahmed, one of the most significant things that he has done in Berlin was establishing Dialogue Orient-Occident, which was a hub for lots of intellectual activities. It was a very influential gathering of scientists and people who were interested in theology, and Orientalists and writers, Arabs and German, who helped him develop a completely different concept. Dialogue Orient-Occident was not just a place where, like some other places or cultural hubs who are specialized in introducing foreign or alien cultures, or the cultures of those immigrants who are coming to Germany, or those people who are from the sites. It was based on a completely different understanding of how to build cultural bridges, and how to appreciate both the Orient and the Occident at the same time, and how to see the influences that they have exerted on each other. This initiative actually was sponsored mainly by Ahmed from his own modest salary and savings. He refused. Some of his friends helped in part with the financing, but he refused to get funding from some Gulf states who he felt are going to influence the vision that he had for this initiative. And naturally, it didn't last long, and for this reason and for other reasons, he couldn't continue, and it stopped operating at some point in time. But the story of Ahmed is interesting, because Ahmed was born in a small town in Egypt. Ahmed was born in Faraskour. Faraskour is a delta town of Egypt, and it's a place where he received his first education, his initial years from الابتدائية, primary school and prep school, and so on and so forth. That was, as I said, 1940 when he was born. He was born 4 April 1940. And at the age of 19, Ahmed moved. His father and mother were separated. They were living each one with his partner or with a partner. And Ahmed lived most of the time with his grandmother at some stage. And it was a challenging life for him. I think the rapport was not that strong at the time. And then he moved to one of his uncles, the brother of his mother, or his uncle from the mother's side. At the age of 19, Ahmed finishes his initial education, Abitur in German, أو الثانوية العامة in Egypt, and takes a very interesting decision at the time. Ahmed decides to travel to Saudi Arabia as a teacher, which was quite a different challenge for him. At the time, it was possible to teach بالثانوية العامة, and he had to sign a declaration at the airport to state that there are two things he would not talk about. One is politics, and the other is the earth. At that time, there was the understanding that the earth is flat, and talking about an earth that is not flat was not something that a teacher should be encouraged to do. In his blog, Ahmed talks about various things, and in part he talks about this experience. Let me try to see if I can get this here, because Ahmed has two blogs, one in Arabic and one in German. And in the Arabic blog, he touches sometimes on his early life. And this is, as he says, this is one of the papers that he luckily found. And he wrote it when he was 19 years old. He was teaching in a primary school in Saudi Arabia. And interestingly, Ahmed was so keen on lots of the thoughts and ideas that he had developed later on when he was an integral part of the student movement and the left movement in Bielefeld when he went there. But you can see the versions of that in this interesting letter. Ahmed says here that he has written a document or a memorandum or a letter suggesting a concept of cooperation and consultation between the teachers in the school and the wider management of the education system there, most likely the superiors who are in charge of this school. The second day, he found that he has been summoned and he's questioned about various accusations, obviously as a result of him calling for some kind of consultation and maybe a whiff of democracy that probably they felt a little bit anxious about. And consequently, he was trying to deflect all these accusations, because immediately after he did that, he was accused of being negligent about his work. He is accused about various types of accusations, which obviously were not true. And here he is trying to defend himself, saying that I cannot accept these accusations, and I'm very keen on the interest of the school and the students, and that's why I'm raising these issues about cooperation and consultation. It didn't last long. Ahmed left Saudi Arabia at the age of 19 and decided to go to Germany. And he went in different stops and different parts before he landed in Berlin. And his career took a completely different turn. But I still find it interesting to see some of the manuscripts of what he has written at the age of 19 and 18 and 17, because in some of them you will find, apart from the fact that the Arabic is sound and superb and the language is very expressive, and you can see also in some of these early scripts that he's very much influenced by Taha Hussein and his writings. So later on, Ahmed settles in Berlin and he's mainly working as a teacher for German language. But he was not just any German language teacher. Ahmed was a scholar. Ahmed was approving translators. He was not a translator as much as the translator of the translators. He was the boss of it. He was so good at his knowledge of the German language that he was the one to give the approvals for people who want to work as German language translators. Ahmed was a shadow translator for many of the German translators who translated Naguib Mahfouz into German and Gamal al-Ghitani. He would review their work. They may sometimes, I mean, in my view, I was always a little bit upset about it because I think he deserved more than the very casual acknowledgement in the introduction that is often written by the translator, but his contribution was really significant. He wrote also in scholarly books and textbooks, various chapters that were published in his name, and he wrote occasionally in newspapers like Die Zeit and some other prominent German newspapers. And he had contributions in the Deutsche Welle, in the Quadriga, which he didn't like very much. He was not very much into journalism and the media as such. He didn't like the quick, casual contributions. And in the two blogs that I put references to, he was busy in his last years with some grand ideas that really can change quite a lot about our understanding of civilization as such. Ahmed was, I think it followed an exhibition that we went to together, and it was an archaeological exhibition in which it was clear that some of the deserts that we know now as deserts thousands of years ago were not deserts, were jungles. And it gave him some interesting ideas about the development of monotheism, of al-adyan al-tawhidiyya, al-adyan al-ibrahimiyya, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And in his last article in German, and the blog in German actually has very sophisticated articles and much, much deeper than the ones that he wrote in Arabic, which were general reflections. The Arabic ones were general reflections. He was talking about his childhood. He was talking sometimes about politics, some very deep thoughts. But the German one had very sophisticated ideas, including that idea that he was very passionate about. And he even traced the rain levels in some centuries, thousands of years ago, and he could find a correlation between the emergence of monotheistic religions and some climate changes that led to wider migrations, which you will see the reflections of in stories about Noah, the flood, the Tufan, and you'll see it in the Moses story about the splitting the sea or the water. You'll see it in the reference to Hijrah in the Islamic calendar and how important Hijrah is, which he believes was a much bigger event in the history of the Arab Peninsula than just the Muslims going with the Prophet Muhammad from Mecca to Medina. It's in his view, and based on what he has studied, it was a much bigger thing. So I wouldn't dwell too much about it. Maybe I will talk about some other aspects of my friendship with Ahmed, but I don't want Aisha and Tobias and Martina, who also joins us from Cologne, and Ibrahim, who joins from Zurich. So أنا بقولها كده صح يا أستاذ إبراهيم؟ Zurich؟ تمشي؟ Okay. Also, and as I said, you know, Deutsch is fine. Deutsch wird auch gesprochen, wenn Sie wollen, oder English. I prefer English because I think it would be relevant to most of the people who are following us. Many of Ahmed's friends understand understand English, and also our friends in Egypt probably understand English as well, and less German. Shall I start with? I'll start with you, Ibrahim. I don't know which angle you would like. I mean, you have known Ahmed for quite a long time as well.
Correct. Yeah, I would like to talk about Ahmed as a friend, the first line, and maybe we can come to another aspects as well. Back in the 70s of the last century, when I came to Berlin the first time to study as a TU, and around 76, I met Ahmed first time in Berlin. There was a kind of organization there called the Egyptian Club. The Egyptian Club was e.V. Eingetragener by them, and it was a opportunity for Egyptians to come together, mostly students, and celebrate whatever Eid and make discussions about Egypt, about the development in Egypt. It was very interesting and exciting time as well after the year of 73. So that was when we met the first time. And then we started actually discussing about the politics in Egypt, about Sadat's politics, about Camp David, and so on. And we realized that we, in general, the majority of the people there don't agree with what is going on in Egypt. So we started to express that in form of organizing demonstrations in the street of Berlin, distributing leaflets, organizing rallies, and so on. So this kind of work brought us even closer together. So this kind of friendship with close sides, political sides, but also close interests. So it was really very exciting time. And then we traveled a lot together within Germany. For example, we went to New Year's Eve. We spent some times with Astrid and her mother.
Astrid, his daughter, yeah.
Yeah. And daughter, yeah. In Bremen or at the North Sea. And later on, when I left Berlin to Munich, and then later on to Zurich for work reasons, this relationship became even stronger because Berlin was part of my life. So I used to go to Berlin very often. And Ahmed also used to come to Zurich to visit me. And this relationship stayed and became longer. And the interesting thing is, later on, my kids, I used to take my kids to Berlin. And they loved Berlin for whatever reason. And in the age of 14, 15, they used to go on their own to Berlin. She just called Ahmed, can we come for 3 days or 4 days? Yes. So they went over and enjoyed Berlin, stayed at Ahmed's place, and then enjoying the nightlife in Berlin and whatever. And the last time we came together was really 3 years ago, when he came to Zurich with Fabio. That was the first time I see Fabio as adult. I know Fabio as a little kid, and I have some photos and videos of him as a little kid, but I saw him the first time as a big boy.
I made that video, by the way, but anyway.
Yeah. And we spent here around 1 week going to the mountains and the lakes in Switzerland, traveling around. It was very nice time because I noticed also that the relationship between Ahmed and Tabio is growing very well.
Yeah. There is something I wanted to ask you about, Ibrahim. Well, first of all, tell me about the impact of 1967 defeat, which was not just a military defeat. It was a defeat of a much bigger concept that Ahmed and his generation believed in. And I think this has influenced Ahmed, and I think it has sort of affected him extremely negatively for quite a long time. And it probably explains to me that he didn't go to Egypt for a long time till he goes again in the 80s, but that's a different story. But you were around him that time.
Yeah, I mean it was a defeat for Ahmed, but also for a generation.
True.
Our generation, we grew up with the idea of Arab nationalism, of Great Egypt, and so on. And then we experienced 67 as a defeat, and but also the development afterwards and the idea of Sadat going to Israel and making a peace agreement, leaving all the other partners outside.
Sure, but I wanted to understand. أحمد ما راحش مصر لفترة طويلة جدا لحد 86 تقريبا. ونزل زيارة واحدة، والزيارة دي كان تأثيرها سيء جدا عليه، لدرجة إني ما قدرتش أقنعه ينزل مصر تاني إلا في 2014 تقريبا.
Because of the change in Egypt. The change, all the ideas we grew up with and internalized were gone. So there was a big disappointment for him and for us as well. By the way, one of our friends in Berlin by then, Ali Mitwalli, who was left Egypt even in the 60s and went to Berlin, and he refused to go back to Egypt for around 20 years. And he went to Egypt on October 6, 81, when we landed in Egypt in the airport. Sadat was shot 1 hour before.
Okay.
But it is I say it is Ahmed's problem and my problem. It is a generation's problem by then, and it is for me as well. I stayed a long time not going to Egypt after 77, maybe 5 or 6 years later. Yeah.
بس هو بالنسبة له
Yeah, he's gone.
بالنسبة له الزيارة بتاعت 86 كانت بداية إدراكه لأنه مصر اللي في خياله مختلفة خالص. يعني هو كان خارج من مصر. لما كنا بنزوره في البيت عنده تلاقي يعني أحمد كان he develops passions. يعني أحمد بيبقى passionate بحاجة وتلاقيه دخل فيها جامد، وقدرته على التعلم كانت مدهشة. يعني فكرة إن أحمد يتعلم ألماني بهذه البراعة والجودة وهو لسه خارج من المدرسة الثانوي في مصر، ما شافش ألماني قبل كده، ده كان غريب جدا. وأن يتقنها إلى هذه الدرجة. فكرة إن هو يقرر إن هو يتعلم عود فيصبح عازف بارع للعود. أحمد يقرر إن هو يتعلم أسترونومي. يعني تروح تلاقي أحمد عنده التلسكوب. أنا عرفتش أتعلم حاجات كتيرة منه. أسترونومي قاعد في البيت وعمال يراقب النجوم وعنده كتب وقاعد يقعد يشرح لك النجوم والحاجات دي كلها. وبعدين مرة واحدة يبقى عنده باشن بالأفلام بالسينما المصرية، وتظهر الشرايط الفيديو ويظهر الدكان اللي كان اسمه الصباح للفيديو باين ولا ايه في برلين، ونروح نأجر منه ب2 مارك كل مره فيديو نوع، لحد ما احمد يقرر ان هو يبني مكتبه كامله لافلام فيديو، يبتدي يجمع الافلام القديمه ويعمل عنها، وبعدين يبتدي يعمل محاضرات عشان يتكلم عن السينما المصريه. وبعدين بعد كده يبتدي يعمل he developed a passion at some stage. طبعا المطربين طبعا المعروفين، وبعدين كده يبتدي مره واحده يقول لك ده في واحده اسمها مش عارف رأي ابراهيم، او نجمه ابراهيم، او يعني ابتدي يجمع لهم برضو الشرايط. كان عنده الكوارتر انش ريل اللي هو الجهاز التسجيل القديم اللي الناس بتعمله شرايط، اللي انا ما شفتوش الا بعد كده في البي بي سي، وده كان موجود عنده ومجمع عليه شرايط ومسجل للشيخ امام عنده في البيت وهو بيعزف. وبعدين يبتدي في الاواخر في السنوات الاخيره هي ديفلوب باشن، بقى مهتم جدا بالباليه. يعني احمد كان مهتم جدا بالباليه، وكان بيجمع فيديوهات باليه، وكان صديقه راينر، لانه راينر نبيلك كان بيسافر روسيا، وراينر بيعرف روسي وسكولر برضو مش صغير ومش قليل، فراينر كان بيجيب له الفيديوهات بتاعت الباليه والافلام بتاعته. فقدرته المدهشه دي على التعلم وعلى ان هو ينغمس في حاجه لحد ما يجيب اخرها، دي كانت شيء مش عادي الحقيقه.
مش عادي. وعلى فكره في هذا المقام يعني احمد كان مسجل نفسه في جامعه الاف في برلين سوسيولوجي.
تمام.
لكن هو رفض انه يدرس، لان قال ان الدراسه في الجامعه ما بتجيبلوش اي نتيجه. فهو يبقى ان هو قراءاته في السوسيولوجي وعلمه بالسوسيولوجي كان يتعدى يمكن معرفه اساتذه في الجامعه. لكن قال لك ان انا اروح احضر محاضرات عشان في الاخر اعمل امتحان واخد شهاده ان انا معايا مش عارف ايه. رفض ان هو ما كانش بيحضر خالص، هو مجرد مسجل نفسه هناك على اساس ان هو طالب، لكن هو قال ان المعرفه خارج الجامعه اكتر واعمق واوسع من اي شهاده الواحد ياخدها في الاخر.
وده حقيقي، وهو كانت معرفته على درجه سكولر. يعني احنا كلنا نعرف ان هو السكولرز بتوع الاورينتاليزم واللي كانوا بيدرسوا علوم اللاهوت والدراسات المقارنه كانوا كلهم اصدقاء ليه، وكانوا بيطلبوا ان هو يراجع لهم بعض الحاجات او بيناقشوه في بعض الافكار اللي هم بيعملوها. لكن النقطه اللي انا يمكن سرحت شويه وانا بقولها لك، انه مصر الكبيره قوي اللي كانت في دماغه دي بكل الادب والفكر والعلم والفن والرقص والمزيكا، وهو كان باشنت جدا ومحب عميق جدا لتحيه كاريوكا ونعيمه عاكف، ويعني الحاجات دي كلها كنا بنشوفها معاه، وكان بيقعد يجيب اصحابه ويقعد يفرجهم على الافلام دي ويشرح لهم الحاجات دي كلها. اما نزل مصر في الثمانينات دي كانت صدمه كبيره جدا، لانه لقى مصر تانية غير اللي هو كان بيتكلم عليها. احمد لما كنا بنزوره في وقت من الاوقات كان في حاجه تانية خالص في دماغه، كان في مصر كبيره جدا فيها ادب كبير، فيها ناس هو ما كانش احمد ما كانش عنده تعالي على حد الحقيقه، يعني ما كانش متعالي على الثقافات التانية، لكن في نفس الوقت ما كانش عنده احساس بان هو ناقص حاجه. يعني زي ما هو كمان ما كانش عنده احساس ان هو ناقص حاجه قدام الاكاديميين اللي هو كان بيقرا ربما احسن من بعضهم، لكن كمان ما كانش عايش في المانيا هو حاسس انه في مجتمع افضل من مجتمعه او ثقافه افضل من ثقافته. هو كان بيتعامل مع الثقافات كلها باعتبارها منتج انساني وحضاري، وكان مهتم بتاثيرات الثقافه وبعضها. زياره 86 الحقيقه كانت مشكله بالنسبه لي انا، لانه انا قعدت فتره طويله بحاول اقنعه يزور بقى مصر اللي هو قاعد يتكلم عليها دي، وهو متردد، حتى جئنا لعام 2014 ودي الزياره اللي هو نزل فيها. يعني انا خدته، رحنا اسكندريه، وبعد كده نزلنا رحنا على الاقصر، واخدنا مركب من الاقصر لاسوان، ودي من صوره في اسوان لما انا اقنعته ان هو يقعد مكان سواق الحنطور ويتصور. الزياره دي ما كررهاش برضو تاني، يعني من 2014 وحتى 2020 كان دايما الفكره بتيجي، لكن كان بيغيرها. وكان من الحاجات اللي انا لاحظتها شويه عليه بعد ما رجعنا او بعد ما رجع من الزياره دي، انه بقى عنده باشن بحاجه ما كانتش موجوده قبل كده. بعد ما ركبنا المركب من الاقصر لاسوان، ابتدى احمد يهتم جدا بالشيفات، برحلات المراكب اللي في بحيرات برلين، الاشبريه بقى والبحيرات كلها، الفانزي وما حولها والشلاختنزي وكل الحاجات دي. وانا مش قادر انسى يعني الصور اللي انا صورتها له واحنا على المركب في الرحلات دي، الوله بتاعه بالطبيعه والنظرات اللي كان يعني دي من زياره منهم، بس دي ما كانتش على المركب، بس هو كان كده برضو على المركب واحنا رايحين الاقصر لاسوان، يعني كان مسحور بالطبيعه اللي موجوده دي، وكانما هو بالرحلات بعد كده اللي كنا بنعملها بالشيف فارت او المراكب في البحيرات كان بيحاول يسترجع الى حد ما تجربه الرحله بتاعت الاقصر واسوان.
في حاجة تانية عايز أقولها، إن هو أحمد في الابتداء من الثمانينات كان له إخوات، له أخت وله أخين على ما أعتقد من ناحية الأب، يعني أو من ناحية الأم، سوري، من ناحية الأم. لأن هو دولت هو ما كانش شافهم، لما عاش فترة طويلة ما شافهمش، وكانوا كبروا يعني وتطوروا، إن هو تعلق بيهم جدا. يعني هو كان بيروح، هم مش عارفين ياخدوا فيزا عشان يجوا ظروف ألمانيا، فكانوا بيروحوا يروحوا يقابلهم في تركيا. كان
سامية وجدي اللي في اسبانيا، وسامية اللي في بورسعيد اعتقد.
بالظبط. وله الاخ اللي هو حاليا في اسبانيا، ده كان دايما، ده مش مشكله، مش بعيد يعني، كان بيزوره، وكان فكان بيجي له، وكان احمد بيروح له، وديت كانت بالنسبه له عمليه مهمه جدا، ان هو كمان يعني لقى عيله، له اخت واخ، وممكن بيزورهم وبيقول، لانه عاش فتره طويله ما فيش العلاقه العائليه دي.
واسترد بنته نزلت مصر اكتر من مره، نزلت مرتين على الاقل، ونزلت راحت البلد وراحت زارت المكان اللي نشأ فيه احمد. بس هو كان عنده هذه الرهبه من زياره مصر تاني، لانه كان دايما منزعج وقلقان من فكره انكسار الصوره اللي كانت عنده، والاحساس العميق بقى بالهزيمه المضاعفه. يعني موضوع هزيمه 67 تتواضع الى حد كبير قوي جنب احساسه بالهزيمه الثقافيه اللي هو كان شايفها. هو كان بيعتبر انه مصر انهزمت امام ثقافه الصحراء او ثقافه البدو وثقافه النفط، وكتب عن ده اكتر من مره في البلوج بتاعه، لمسوا فيه المقالات اللي كان بيكتبها بالالماني.
ذلك تعلقه بالسينما وبالافلام اللي هي يعني من تاريخ السينما المصريه، وبداها من فيلم من الارض، خلاف ان هو قال ان السينما المصريه كمان حصل فيها انحدار، يعني انحدار رهيب في ابتداء من الثمانينات والتسعينات، وان الافلام حاجات زي مثلا الثلاثيه بتاعت نجيب محفوظ او عبد الرحمن الشرقاوي والحاجات دي كلها ما عادش في حاجه بهذه القيمه خالص. ده اللي خلاه يهتم كمان بتاريخ السينما المصريه ويعمل له دوكيومنتيشن، ويحاول ان هو يعني يفهم ايه اللي حصل، وايه اللي وصلنا لهذا المجد، وايه اللي رجعنا تاني.
ده حقيقي. I will if you don't mind I will move to Aisha and Tobias, who may be able probably to give us a slightly different angle on Ahmed's life and how you got to know him, and you knew him on a personal level, Aisha and Tobias. From when did you meet Ahmed first? Your mic is off, I think. Oh, it's on now. That's good. Okay, let's go. Okay.
Okay. We tried in English. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's for me really it's a bit difficult. I don't know if I really find the right words, and I don't know if we're really the right ones to talk about Ahmed's life after the 80s. Maybe I got to know him around in the 90s in Berlin, and not personally. He was actually holding talks about Egyptian film, about film, Arab film, and Arab cinema in the Werkstatt der Kulturen. And I don't remember exactly when we became real friends, which was like we didn't talk about work all the time. It was like it was very fast that it became somehow familiar. And that was about in the 2000s, in the beginning of the 2000s. I was we met a lot of times and talked also about politics, which was not all the time very good. we struggled sometimes. I had different opinions sometimes, but it was more like more than that. He became someone, I said to Tobias before I think I pronounced it the first time when we had our wedding. I said, I have a family, I have a personal family, somehow from blood, but I have a bigger family which is made out of friends. And Ahmed was one big friend in this part of my family. And I said that on our wedding day. And we looked up all the photographs and we didn't see Ahmed in one photograph, except in one where he was behind us. And but he was really, in my mind, he was very much in the middle. And after our wedding, he always said it was so heartful that you talked of me as part of your family. This is how our relationship, I think, and maybe I cannot talk for Tobias, but our relationship was mixed from having some sharing parts of work together, which is, of course, in terms of Arab history, Arabs in German, and all this exchange. I'm more from the side of deconstructing this Orientalism stuff, which was also a bit of our anger sometimes, where we were in the same, let's say, same sphere of arguments. But this personal relationship was very, until before 1 year maybe, very close. And this is very difficult for me now, because in the last year I didn't see Ahmed very much, and it is a bit difficult for me because I didn't talk to him
recently,
for the last month. So,
Tobias, do you want to add something to what Aisha said, or shall I?
No, please. Yes, I would like to.
Please.
At first, good evening to everybody that can hear us. مساء or guten Abend. I tried in English also. I met Ahmed at first in 2012 someday, I think, after I met Aisha, and he was somebody who was just a part. He became a part of our life in a way as a friend. So I don't remember a specific times when we met first, but he was a friend of Aisha, and so gradually he became a friend of mine, and we met, and he was at our home. We cooked together, we ate together, we drank, we talked a lot about politics and stuff, about culture, about arts and different kinds, but also about how's the weather, where can you go and make some nice trips or something like that. So what you talk about with friends. So and Ahmed was a honored guest at our wedding, I think, and what I remember most is that he made the best picture of us. It's the best wedding picture that exists is the one Ahmed did, and I always remember this. And so there are a lot of meetings we had and where we did some stuff together. But there in the end, no, that's not the right word. But anyway. There are lots of places in our life and in our flat physically that are part of Ahmed and no, not part, but that are
he left his
marks and his presence. So maybe there's a grinder in our kitchen that I'm using for grinding Gewürze, Tawabel. And that's a gift from Ahmed. So every time I cook, I'm thinking on Ahmed. And there's a plant that was a gift. And today I carried it around the flat because I was doing some some stuff, and I was reminded of Ahmed, and there are other things like that. So
he has a gift, Ahmed, and I think before I moved to Martina, and also because Jochen asked me to sort of translate some of what I said in Arabic, because it wasn't clear to everyone, and Martina said exactly the same thing. But I wanted to say something also about Ahmed and his his human ability to, which often is noticed when you see how he deals with kids and how kids like him. And I remember that when Ibrahim was saying how his kids liked Ahmed, and I think this is part of the reason for them to like Berlin, because Ahmed has, I don't know, it was a natural affinity, not only with kids and human beings, also with cats and animals. And I think people know and notice that in one of he uses a symbol of a cat in one of, I don't know if it's the WhatsApp or the Facebook. I think it's the WhatsApp, and that's a cat that used to go out of his neighbor's house and to run to his flat and to stay with him.
I think the point for me is that Ahmed was always interested in other people. He was hearing you and he was talking to you, and he could relate to the things you say and you think, and that's what I remember. And it's I have very, very fond memories.
He had wie ist es? Tobias? What did you say?
Ich habe sehr schöne Erinnerungen, sehr gute Erinnerungen an ihn. The fond memory, I don't know if that's the right word, but anyway.
Yeah, you have good memories of him, and yeah, I think what you said actually rings a bell. Sorry, Aisha, go ahead.
No.
I would say that in what you say actually rings a bell, because it's interesting. I mean, most of my friends know that I have known Ahmed for more than 30 years, but the years don't really count when it comes to Ahmed. I do remember very well. I mean, we were speaking every day, sometimes more than 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes more than once, regardless to where I am in the world. The funny thing is, Ahmed would remember the names of my friends that I sometimes don't remember. I would be telling him a story about something, or he would ask me about something, and then I try to remember the story. While I'm telling Ahmed the story, I would try to remember the name of a friend, and Ahmed would remind me with the names of my friends. He was very attentive, and he was extremely good when it comes to listening to people, and that's part of his power as a friend. In 2018, I decided that I should really celebrate this sort of long friendship, and I wrote about it. Now, it was difficult because our relationship was not the kind where I would say thank you, Ahmed, and he would say thank you, Hussam. We would feel a little bit awkward about it. You cannot thank yourself. You have been with someone for such a long time, and it feels a little formal if we do these things formally. But I decided to write about it, and I said, this year I'm celebrating 30 years of my friendship with Ahmed, and I wrote something about it. And I wrote in it that we both are, some kind of introverts in a way, and we sort of feel awkward about, saying things publicly about, people that we love or we like. And I bet that Ahmed probably wouldn't even put a like on that story. And if he does, it's a 50-50 chance. And he actually put a one-liner of 6 words. I wrote, a huge thingy with pictures, 3 pictures of us together and so on and so forth, talked about this long. And he wrote this because there was that sort of natural connection that he builds with people with quite a lot of ease. And before I go to Martina, because Martina asked me to translate part of what I read, because even though that she may understand some of it, but some of the people who listen to us from Ahmed's friends probably didn't get it. To me, it was a mystery to know someone who is so much of an Egyptian. You go to Berlin. I met Ahmed in Berlin in 1989, and it was an exhibition that I had. At the time, I was more of a cartoonist and illustrator before I became a writer and a broadcaster. And it was an exhibition in Goethe Institute for my cartoons. Ahmed read about it and saw it in the Taz. The Taz wrote at the time and put something like 3 small cartoons of mine. And Ahmed came to see that Egyptian. And from then onwards, as Tobias said, you know, there was sort of this natural path. You don't really feel or know at what point in time you start being friends. You just happen to be friends. There is no beginning to it, you know. The only beginning could be the day when you met, but other than that, you wouldn't really remember how this happens. Now, you go to Ahmed's place, and you'll find all these Duden and, you know, Bruder Grimm encyclopedias and all of that stuff. But at the same time, you find lots of Arabic books, and you find somebody who's really passionate about Egyptian movies, Egyptian cinema, belly dancers, oud. He plays oud. He tells you about, you know, when Sheikh Imam went to his house, and actually this oud is Sheikh Imam's oud. He got it from him when he visited him. And he's so much of an Egyptian, but he doesn't go to Egypt. You know, this man doesn't go to Egypt. He has been in Germany for such a long time. He doesn't go to Egypt, and it's a contradiction. I mean, I didn't get it. You know, in the old days, traveling was expensive. It was difficult for people to travel, but it didn't. You know, later on, it wasn't expensive. Ahmed could afford to go to Egypt. Now, I knew later on about his trip in 86, but I'm not sure about the date. It could be 86, 85, and we talked about it several times because that was a shock. You know, that big Egypt with its cultural heritage, and to see it declining in that way, especially after the defeat of 1967, which was not about the military aspect of it, but the fact that people seem to feel that they have built a bubble that wasn't true, and we were not going apparently in the right path in the sense of establishing the identity that Egypt started building for itself probably from 1919 or from the revolution of 1919 of Saad Zaghloul. And all these big figures, you know, in thought and in literature and in writing and in philosophy, everything was he was seeing everything dwindling and changing. And it was for me very difficult to try to get him to go to Egypt. You know, I keep on talking to him about it. Let's visit Egypt together from 86 onwards, and it doesn't work till we reach 2014, and I managed to convince Ahmed to meet me in Egypt, and he stays with me, and then we go to Alexandria together, and then we travel to Luxor, and then we take a Nile cruise from Luxor to Aswan. And what I was saying also is that I felt that he developed that passion of going on ships after this trip, of going in ships in Berlin. After that, when I go to Berlin, he says to me, "Okay, let's take the ship," and I would see on his face the same expressions that I used to see when he was in Egypt on the Nile cruise, looking around nature and admiring, you know, all this beauty. But these two trips, even though that it was a major event in his life, but they developed some kind of anxiety and quite a lot of anger, actually. Ahmed was very angry from then onwards about what he sees as a cultural defeat in Egypt changing from a hub of movies, of cinema, of art, of artists, of thought, of writing, of I wouldn't say everything has gone, but quite a lot of it, if we step down from the elites and from the writers and journalists and people who are interested in all of that beauty, the majority of the people are no longer interested in culture in the same way, even though many people became hostile to art and artists. It became associated in the mind with the sin and the haram, and that was very agitating for Ahmed. Whenever he becomes really angry, and I had to calm him down and change the subject, because that was something he sort of identified very much with that spirit, and he didn't want to see it go. This is Egypt that he grew in. This is Egypt that he knew, Egypt of Salah Abu Saif, of Yusuf Shaheen, of the cinema world, of Tawfiq al-Hakim, of Taha Hussein. This is what he knew, and this is what he preserved in his memory and in his library and his collection of books and videos and music recordings, and he did not want to see that going, and that was really painful for him. Martina, also, you wrote to me in the back. I'm sorry, we will bring you now to the forefront of the screen. And you wrote in the back that, I mean, I will leave you to start your story from wherever you like, but I just wanted to remind you that you said Dialogue Orient Occident that Ahmed has established in Berlin was the inspiration of another Dialogue Orient Occident.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to remember Ahmed together and to maybe just, I think we can only tackle maybe some points today of his life, and I would not really be able to talk about Ahmed as a person. I think it's all still too fresh for me that he has passed away, and I'm still under sort of the shock of realizing that that Ahmed is not with us anymore. But yes, about Dialogue Orient Occident and how I met Ahmed, maybe it's funny. I tried all those the last couple of days, to remember when exactly I met Ahmed for the first time. And to be frank, I do not remember. This is really crazy, but it's a fact. But I know that it must have been sometime in the end of the 1980s, because I used to spend quite a lot of time in Berlin then. I'm based in Cologne. I have been based in Cologne since 1983, but I had friends in Berlin, and I used to go to Berlin quite a lot, especially in the end of the 1980s, but I never moved to Berlin. And at that time there were, because I had studied Arabic, and I did Middle Eastern studies, so there were lots of activities at the time in the 80s, end of the 80s, in Berlin at the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. So we used to attend conferences, we used to attend lots of events, and I suppose that it was at one of those events that I first met Ahmed. And actually I talked to my husband, and my husband even met him. He remembers that he met him for the first time in 1987 when he was translating at a cultural event. So it must have been then. And the interesting thing was that we had a common friend who was the late Ahmed Abdallah Rozza, who was a very close friend of mine since the beginning of the 1990s, because after I finished my degree, I went to Egypt twice, in 1989 and in 1990, and both times I spent like 4 or 5 months in Cairo, and this how I got acquainted with Ahmed Abdallah, and I think also Ahmed Abdallah played a role in how I got to know Ahmed Ezzeldin. And we all became close friends. We sometimes also met together in Berlin. Ahmed Abdallah used to come a lot also to Cologne and visit us when he was traveling internationally, was stopping over, and we also met together in Berlin. And I think it must have been in the 1990, beginning of the 1990s, that Dialogue Orient Occident in Berlin was founded, and then the Gulf War happened. And I think we have not talked about this yet, but this was a very strong event which also marked us for a long time, all of us. The Gulf War in 1990, first the occupation of Kuwait by Iraq, and then the Gulf War in early 1990. And after this, we were a group at the time in Cologne of several like translators, people who were interested in culture, in anything cultural, and in cultural exchange, and we felt that because there is a strong wave of anti-Arabism, of anti-Islamism, of Islamophobia, and so on, going along with this war against Iraq, and we felt that we wanted to do something to mitigate the effects, or to promote a better understanding, a deeper understanding, and the thought or the idea of Dialogue Orient Occident was the right idea in the right moment, I think. And so we were several of us. We were a small group of like 5-6 people in Cologne. Were in touch with Dialogue Orient Occident in Berlin, and we decided and we discussed a lot about common ideas and common goals, and then we decided to set up a separate association, an independent association in Cologne, but under the same name and with the same ideas. And for a couple of years, we were in very close contact and we cooperated very closely. And Ahmed was contributing lots of ideas, and he also came to Cologne, I think, once or twice, also to for lectures on certain topics which we organized. But we also had lots and lots of lectures and events, cultural events, and so on. And all of this was inspired by, by the work of Ahmed and the group around him, because Dialog Orient-Occident was founded and inspired by Ahmed Ezzeldin, but of course also there were other people around him at the time, who maybe will also still intervene during this this streaming event. I don't know if they are there, if they are present, if any of them is there.
Yeah, I think Jochen was in doubt as to whether he would join or not, but Jochen is around if he wants to join us. I was hoping that Raina Nabilik at some stage would do. But one thing I'm planning to do, with your help, and probably we discussed this briefly, is I would like to do a series of interviews with the people that Ahmed dealt with, especially in the time of Dialog Orient-Occident, just to understand a little bit more about Ahmed's thoughts and ideas, some of which have been captured in his blog, the German one and the Arabic one. But I think, as I said earlier, the German one has more of the more scholarly founded pieces of work around cultural dialogue and civilization dialogue and religion influences and anti-Semitism and Semitism. And he has a very interesting article in which he is trying to understand what is the meaning of Semitism if we are talking about anti-Semitism. And it's quite an interesting piece, together with lots of pieces around racism and he was busy with all these ideas around cultural integration, cultural dialogue. And I hope we, with the help of his friends, that we can keep some of his legacy, at least in the form of some interviews that would stay and maybe inspire others to follow his work.
If I may just add, for me it is very important that also I had this mixed relationship. I think it's maybe a little bit similar to what Tobias and Aisha also talked about, because we had this kind of working relationship, but over the years it developed into a very personal, strong friendship that was not based on academic exchange only anymore. So I really appreciated this in Ahmed, his capability of his loyalty and his capability of developing friendships. And we remained friends for like 30 years, and we went through many things together, although we were always far. We did not have this kind of day-to-day relationship because we were not in Berlin. I was sometimes seeing Ahmed for, well, maybe one time in a year, and sometimes 3 times in a year. And sometimes we wouldn't talk for a long time, but as soon as we talked, we were back to our usual friendship, and this was a very strong relationship. And even my daughter, my younger daughter Alia, who celebrated her 20 years yesterday. She was born on the 1st of January in the year 2001. She developed a strong relationship in spite of the difference, the age difference of 60 years. And she did this completely independently from myself, because she, for other reasons, also goes to Egypt, goes to Berlin quite often. And and she met Ahmed, she went to see him, and they developed a very strong relationship over 4 years, where he became, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's too much to say this, but some kind of a mentor, or they had a strong level of exchange. They were able to communicate. And I found this so great. I found this just wonderful. That in spite of this age difference, they had so many things in common, and each time they were happy to meet. So,
well, it's something that, you touched on, and I think Ibrahim also touched on this before. And it's something that actually I know from Ahmed about all his friends. It becomes, Ahmed sort of, crosses generations. He becomes a friend of the, the people in Bielefeld, his friends in Bielefeld. Their sons and daughters who already have sons and daughters have a very strong connection with him. Some of them have written to us when we started this piece of work, and some of them wanted to join at some point in time. But he has sort of that ability to connect with people in a very special and natural way. He had a strong relationship with my son and daughter in a similar way, but because he hasn't seen them for quite a long time, they probably don't have the same connection as they had it before. But in the very beginning, he used to see them, and he used to come and visit us in London, and he developed that kind of rapport. And I think that's one of the strongest assets that Ahmed had as a friend. This natural ability to connect, and this natural ability to listen to people and to really empathize and not to be judgmental. Ahmed is probably one of the most unjudgmental people that I have ever met in my life. And when I wrote about my experience with him as a friend, I mentioned the fact that we have never had any argument as friends. I mean, we understood that no one would intend at any point in time to upset the other. Now, when I wrote about it, I said, I definitely said some things to Ahmed that probably would upset him, and maybe he said things that usually would upset anybody in my place. But we always, understood that, as friends, we would always give the benefit of the doubt, and we wouldn't even remember or notice or assume that we haven't had it right, or maybe it wasn't really meant or anything. But over something like 32 years, there wasn't a point in time where we had, why did you do this? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you go and you didn't tell me? All of that stuff that, mostly cloud relationships was extremely pure when it came to Ahmed. There was nothing like this. And even as you said, if you don't see him for some time, he probably would understand that you haven't seen him for some time for a reason. And then if you come back, then you come back again, and things continue in exactly the same way as it was. He was a genuine friend to everybody that he has known. Jochen wanted to join. Let me put the link again. I'm putting the link, and I hope you will get also guidance from the friends who are with you on the platform to let you know that this is the link that you can use. You just click on it. You will go into a studio. You will see a screen, and then you click enter, and you will be with us as soon as you do that, Jochen. There was something I mentioned. I mean, you mentioned Aisha and Tobias that he took the best picture of your wedding. Let me tell you the story of not the picture, because I don't know it, but the story of Ahmed with photography. Because as I said to you, Ahmed, it's very easy for Ahmed to learn new things. Ahmed had no interest in photography when we met. However, we both had interest in falafel. We used to go to Südstern, where we get falafel made in a special way with lots of tahini sauce, and it was the Egyptian falafel. And one day we went together, and Ahmed at the time had his Opel. I don't know if you were there at the time when he had a car. And as clumsy as I am, Ahmed left me in the car, and he had the keys in the car as well. So I wanted to check on him. And the car was locked from inside. I went out, and then I closed the door, and here you are. We are there. The cars are inside. Me standing outside. Ahmed came in, looked at me. What happened? And I said, no, I was just waiting for you. And he said, but the keys are inside, and the car is locked. It was, to make it worse, it was the evening, and it was a Sunday. So Ahmed didn't say anything. He wasn't upset. He wasn't angry. There was no whiff of. I was upset because I didn't know what to do, and I didn't understand how come I do such a horrible thing. So I decided to do something about it afterwards. So I wanted to give him a present. At the time, I had a Zenit E, a Russian piece of metal with a lens, which was good. I mean, I wouldn't say anything about Russian industry at the time, but it wasn't the most sophisticated thing. And for me, I go in steps. So I went from the Zenit to the East German Praktika, and then afterwards to the Japanese Olympus, and later on to the Nikon. But for Ahmed, he got this from me as a present. I didn't tell him, this is a compensation for anything, but I always felt guilty that I did something really bad when I got Ahmed to get the locksmith Sunday evening, which I think it meant that he paid probably double or triple the amount of money that he would pay for somebody to unlock the car. So Ahmed started getting interested in photography, and from that moment onwards, he went into leaps. Not like me, going from the Zenit to the Praktika, but Ahmed started getting things with I think it was a Carl Zeiss after that, and then he started enhancing his skills. And I think the last he got was he was fond of another brand that used very expensive. He was a perfectionist, so when he does something, he tends to do it extremely well. So he became the photographer that you are talking about, and the man who took the best picture of your weddings. Jochen, welcome.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yes, I want to mention one phase of history that you didn't mention yet, but which was for me was quite important, because that was the time when I got to know Ahmed. That was when he was in Heidelberg. At the same time, it shows an aspect which has not been mentioned to me, Ahmed as a political person. He went to Heidelberg in replacement of a Palestinian who had been there and who had been working in the Socialist Palestine Committee, which was a kind of organization linked to the SDS, the Socialist Students Organization, in solidarity with the Palestinians, without being anti-Semitic. And Ahmed came and took over this job, and we became close friends. And what amazed me at the time was his kind of very, how do you say in English, rational, very...
His rationality, his ability to be rational.
Rational, yeah, rational way of acting. At that time, he was married to Angelika.
Can you move the camera up a little bit, because or you look at the camera. That's fine. Yeah.
I'm talking through my mobile phone.
That's fine.
Then we met again when I came to Berlin in end of the 80s, and at that time he was working at the Yemen embassy, in the East Berlin Yemen embassy, but he had changed a lot, and he changed in the sense that has been described by you during all this conversation, to somebody with a very broad cultural background, very broad cultural activities, and his main tool of cultural activities at the time were cinema. And he introduced not only me, but many people in Berlin to the Arabic, mainly Egyptian, but also other cinema and culture. And he was always a very political person, but he had changed in the way that his rational atmosphere, his critical attitude was even reinforced. So he was always a very progressive man, but always critical against any dogmatism. And that's one aspect I liked him very much. One very moving is that my wife and I, we had a very nice excursion with him, 8th of November, just 4 weeks before he got this disease. We had a very pleasant time in Potsdam. We have taken photos, and I'll find a way to convey these photos to you. I've already sent them to Astrid. But maybe because these are probably the last photos we have been taken of him.
Yeah, I think
for me they are very, very important.
I think I know from him that he has seen you at least 3 times in the past few months. from between visits and walks. And I think at least 3 times he mentioned that, because we used to debrief each other every day on what we did. But you bring me to something very interesting that I wanted to know a little bit more about. Bielefeld.
Yeah, I know his activities in Bielefeld and his life in Bielefeld. I know only through what he told me. So,
but you remember that he established some kind of a nursery for children?
Yeah. He talked about that. Yeah. But I know only through what he told me, and maybe others, other people here and around will know more about that.
Yeah. I do remember his because it was also a slightly different concept when it came to how they decided to open this nursery and introduce again some progressive ideas into the field of education. But as you said, he came to Berlin at that point in time, and he worked in the Yemeni embassy, in the embassy of Yemen in the eastern part.
That's what he was living. He was employed by them as an interpreter and so on.
Yeah. And I understand also that in Bielefeld he joined forces with other student unions, other foreign student unions, which again he never wanted to. Anka, I don't know if Anka is coming. Anka, we are waiting for you. It's the Kinderladen. Probably Anka would be able to talk to us about the Bielefeld phase a little bit more if she joins us. The interesting thing for me is it's easy to lock yourself, as you said, into being a pro-Palestinian, and at the same time you become an anti-Semite. But he was of the view, and obviously from what you say, that he was trying to establish a slightly different concept, which again extends, human boundaries beyond hatred.
He was a typical thinking in emancipation. Emancipation was the word. I think it's a word that fits very well to him. Very progressive. You could say liberal if that has had not the connotation of neoliberal. He was not neoliberal at all, but he was a liberal in the positive sense of words. In his personal relationships, in his relationship to women, to friends, to children. Yeah, many things have been already mentioned by you.
True, and that's sort of passion with diversity. I mean, he had no prejudice against inclinations, be it cultural or attitudes or anything. I mean, everything for him was acceptable. And back again to Bielefeld, what I understood from him is that he created boundaries amongst all different types of student unions. It was not just the sort of pro-Arab, pro-Palestinian corner. He was extending ties with all the student unions and all the movement of the students in Bielefeld at the time. Well, Jochen, thank you very much. I don't know if Anka is going to join us because I am about to wrap up. And thank all the friends and guests who have joined us. I hope this would be a start. I hope to see you when I come to Berlin. If I come to Berlin again, I used to go mainly to see Ahmed. But probably I will have other reasons to come to see you all and to listen more to your stories and thoughts and ideas about the friend that I would want to end actually with a positive note, with a negative, not with a negative one. I mean, I'm sort of comforting myself with the fact that Ahmed left us the way he wanted to leave. He didn't want to be in pain in his late years. He didn't want to be in agony, and he died peacefully. And I think he did what any one of us would like to do, which is to leave all these good memories with his friends. Almost anyone that met Ahmed or touched him was influenced by his kindness. Well, thank you very much. And as I said, I will hope to see you soon. And we will continue our discussions in our closed groups to see how we can keep Ahmed's
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sam. This was a very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hassam. Thank you very much, everybody. To Zurich, to Berlin. Bye-bye.